Welcome again to Lakeshore Focus, a weekly show highlighting the key issues, important events, and interesting people in our region. I'm Keith Kirkpatrick. Today we are joined by a woman who, as the founder and president of Global Educational Consultants, has dedicated her life to broadening the perspectives of our educators, administrators, social service, and more through multicultural and diversity training. A lifelong educator and now author, she recently published a memoir of her mother's life and survival after the bombing of Hiroshima entitled Winter Always Turns to Spring. Please welcome Dr. Akemi Bailey-Haynie. Did I get your first name right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here today.
Well, thank you for being on the show. And I thought it was real important to work at pronouncing your first name because we Americans sometimes kind of like butcher everybody's names and we think it's okay to butcher them, and I don't think it is.
No, it is not.
So why is it so important to know a person's name?
You know, I think it's important to make an effort to be able to respect, a person's name.
I think it
If
does.
your name is
respect.
Mike and I call you Mickey, I don't know if you will respond.
Right.
So I think, it's important to make that special effort. It connects to the reality of who a person is.
Well, it sounds like your life was very much shaped by your parents, obviously, like most of us, but your parents started in a different part of the world. Were you born in Japan?
No, I was born actually here in Gary, Indiana,
Okay.
right next door.
Okay.
And my mom is a survivor of the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. She was 14 years old. And during the occupation of Japan in 1952, she and my dad married and came to the United States, and I'm the youngest of 7 children.
Wow, you're the youngest. So your dad was a U.S. soldier?
Yes, he was a military policeman in the Army.
Okay, and so that was in 1952.
1952 when
Right.
they were married.
So how old was your mom when the bomb was dropped?
14.
14.
14 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I pronounced it Hiroshima. You pronounced it Hiroshima, right? So,
Hiroshima.
okay, you do
Yeah.
better with the accent. So
That's okay.
So why do people pronounce it both different ways?
I don't think it's that different. I think it depends upon what part of the world you're from, what part. People have all kinds of accents. Hiroshima, people roll the R's. Some people don't roll the R's. When you're acclimated to cultural differences, and you're more sensitive to those differences, then you're able to naturally be enlightened to the correct way in which it should be pronounced.
So it's interesting. Actually, I was taught the first way and then changed because I was told it was wrong. So now I gotta maybe have to switch back here. So.
Let me ask you, who told you it was wrong?
I don't know. That's a really good question. But somebody did along the way to tell me. So your mother was born in Japan and raised.
Yes.
So what did she tell you about her early life when you were growing up? What did she share?
My mother cried many days, doing her utmost, trying to explain to my siblings and me about her life stories, about being a survivor and the family, and when the bomb dropped, and the effect of the dropping of the bomb. She would often say, Americans really don't understand what war is all about. So we would sit around the table a lot of times listening to the wonderful stories, many very painful, about the loss of family and, devastation of life and, people.
What could you share one of those little stories that was kind of one of your favorites that she would share with you about her life growing up?
Well, actually, my mom...
It's probably in the book, right? But
it's all in the book.
But this will be a tease for the book.
A snippet for the book. My mom was actually in Hiroshima. Actually, where the bomb dropped is where my mom lived. 30 days before the dropping of the bomb. The reason why she's living today is because 30 days before the dropping of the bomb, her dad was able to move her and her brothers and my grandmother, which is her mother, to the northern part of Hiroshima with her grandmother. Right now, if they were dropping leaflets from planes to say everybody move from the city and move further away, perhaps 100 miles away from the city. Hiroshima was actual military place off of the seaport. And the average person just can't get all your belongings and move. You just can't pick your family up and take your job with you and take everybody with you. But fortunately, 30 days before the dropping of the bomb, she was able to move, which is like perhaps 50 miles away.
So they got out of the initial
epicenter.
impact.
Yeah, yes,
okay.
yes, yes.
But did she still talk about the effect that bomb had 50 miles away on them? I mean,
yes. Many, many of her family members were killed. The actual day when the bomb dropped, the family was eating dinner, and while they were eating, they heard the big explosion. They ran out. My grandmother lived on the mountainside, and you were able to see the mushroom. You were able to see. They felt and they thought that, oh my goodness, it must have been an explosion of a major factory. But depending upon the wind, for the radiation,
so they
to
were
be able
on
to
the good
devastate.
side of that.
Well, yeah, they were on the good side, not knowing it initially.
Right.
Because had it blown that way, I'm sure their entire family would be lost.
So how did that affect you as growing up, her talking about these stories? I mean, what did it mean to you?
Growing up in the Gary public school system, youngest of 7 children, speaking Japanese as a little girl. This is my mother, not my grandmother. I learned to speak Japanese, and when it was time to go to school, teachers would say to me, "Are you speaking Japanese at home?" And I said, "Yes." "Why are you speaking Japanese? You can't speak English." As a child, 6 years old, very devastated, not knowing that, because of, I feel that how it affected me is that educators are in the position to mold. You either mold them positively or negatively.
Did that feel like that message from those educators was, we don't want people speaking Japanese around here, or was it just you need to learn to speak English because this is America, or what?
Both of those.
Okay, both.
Both of those.
So we don't like the Japanese.
We don't want the Japanese. We don't want you speaking that. We want you to speak English and only English. So during that era, that affected me. Listening to my mother's stories and seeing her struggle with it made me fight.
Seeing her struggle with
trying
the history?
to help us understand it. Trying to be able to let whoever she could understand this concept of war and the devastation of war and what it does to lives and what it does to families, what it does to humanity. Seeing her struggle, it provoked me to go to school, to become an educator and to get my doctorate so that I can become the voice for her.
So you felt like you could then carry her message forward of the things that she was teaching you.
And she had difficulty articulating for the sake of humanity.
So how does your father fit into all of this?
My dad was an activist, a civil rights activist, fighting for justice. He encouraged all of us to be very proud of both the Japanese culture, the African American culture, and he raised us to be able to be the voice necessary and to be speak up, and because of his struggles when he got married to my mom in 1952, his immediate captains and corporals, they didn't want him to marry.
Did they get married over there?
Yes, in Japan.
Okay.
And to bring a Japanese woman to America in 1952, and out of all places, live in Arkansas, the Deep South, was amazing.
Okay, that could have been a big challenge.
More than a big challenge. I mean, actually, it was put in the magazines and papers. Nigger brings nigger brings white Jap to America. All of those kinds of things, struggles.
In the paper.
In the papers. And our family, our dad raised us, not to be racist, but he raised us to be proud and to be able to acknowledge, the greatness of both cultures.
That's a good story. This book's got to be worth reading. That's true. How'd you come up with the title for the book?
Winter Always Turns to Spring.
Yeah, that's really a cool
title. From a Buddhist perspective, we have some of the writings of this Buddhism that's entitled Winter Always Turns to Spring. The concept is winter. People struggle. People suffer. People have obstacles. And my mother, being a survivor of the atomic bomb, the dropping of the bomb gave birth to her great purpose in life.
And to her spring.
Into her spring. And many decades of her life was in winter. So the book is really about before, during, and after the war.
Okay.
Coming to the United States and what that entailed, but before the war, during, and how this dropping of the bomb awakened in her her fight for peace, and all children, all 7 children in her family, began to be able to become activists as well to fight for peace. Really, really wonderful.
You're a good storyteller. There's no doubt about this.
I don't know.
So, oh, you are. So, tell me, you're part Japanese. You're Buddhist, also. You're
Yes,
telling me. So,
I'm
how did you
Buddhist.
pick? I mean, what was your dad? He was
Strong, devout Christian.
okay.
The-
Probably in the Baptist tradition,
yes,
right?
Baptist tradition.
So, how did that work? Being in a Baptist Buddhist, they both start with B, so I guess that maybe works. I
That
don't
helped.
know. That helped.
You know, my dad, naturally in American culture, Japanese, Buddhism was not a very traditional religion compared to today. It's more people practice Buddhism in this country. At the same time, our entire family was part of the Baptist Christian faith. My mother was introduced to Buddhism here in the United States, not in Japan.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting.
And she was introduced to Buddhism, and she began to chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. And she encouraged us, if you ever want to become happy, please try chanting. She never forced us.
And what does that mean?
Chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is an invocation that it means devotion to the mystic law of cause and effect through teachings or sound. What it is, it's a universal law that you chant to activate the most positive potential within the depths of your own life, so that you can realize fundamentally your purpose on the
So
planet
how did you
Earth.
choose to
That.
go the Buddhist way versus the Baptist way?
Actually, as a
Two
little
B's again.
Yeah,
but
that's okay. As a little girl growing up, saw many things, struggles in our family, and I was very sad many days. And keeping in mind, in my heart, in my mind, listening, if you ever want anything and you want to become happy, try chanting. I never forgot that from my mother. And one day I began to try chanting, and long story short, I'm still practicing Buddhism. It has changed the course of my destiny. The entire trajectory of my life has changed.
Can I maybe speculate? Did you witness what you saw as Christian people doing some things that were particularly not in the name of their faith, that were pretty mean, or
Well, actually,
particularly to people of African American backgrounds? I mean,
actually being African American and Japanese is a beautiful combination. At the same time, a very difficult thing, especially in the 60s. Many African Americans didn't accept us because we were part Japanese. Many Japanese definitely didn't accept us because we were African American. And definitely white America didn't accept us because we were part
so
black.
did you feel, were there times you just felt really left out?
Totally struggled.
So what did you do when you're like, I don't belong to this group?
Yes.
This group won't, it's worse. This group won't claim me or even talk to me, and this group won't claim me and talk to me. So did you bond to your brothers and sisters because of this?
Well, we're a very close-knit family anyway. My father raised us that way. My mother, the Japanese culture, is a group society. So we really were very close because of the cultural upbringing of both mother and father. At the same time, yes, we united as a family, and, practicing Buddhism helped expand our capacity, understanding, and to be able to go inside of our own life, transform what's there so that we can make the greater impact on the outside.
Did any people in your family, any of your brothers and sisters, look more traditional, so that they fit with a group and didn't have to
Yes.
suffer with that as
Yes.
much?
Yes.
A couple of them did.
Some of them look more African American. Those that will look more African American
Like they fit with a group.
were accepted. Those that look less African American struggled more to successfully survive in a world of difference. Is really what my diversity training has been all about.
So how do you answer the questions that I hate in this country,
Okay.
which is to classify yourself, right? And when you fill out all the demographic forms, so what do you put?
I
'Cause
always put other,
Okay.
or I check African American, I check Asian, I check both.
See, I'm a big advocate for we should be able to check as much as we want.
Because why I do that is because to check one and not the other totally negates my mother.
Right.
Or to check my mother totally negates my father.
Right.
I'm part Japanese and African American. That's my life. That's who I am. You know, it makes me who I am, you know, and so to cause a human being to not even, first of all, acknowledge that, you know, I think is not the way of creating a wonderful humanity in a world.
So what's the greatest lesson you feel you have to teach people about diversity when you're speaking to groups or working with groups? What do you feel like is the main message you want to give to them?
You know, I think it's real critical to understand that the destiny of a nation changes with one human being. You don't need a whole group of people. Martin Luther King was one person, changed the destiny of America. Mahatma Gandhi was one person, changed the destiny of India. You know, you think about it further, Hitler was one person. He changed the destiny of a nation negatively. We need to become empowered people to be able to transcend differences and respect the dignity of every human being.
So some people obviously get that, and there's a lot of people who just fight against it. Why do so many people fight against that? I don't want to understand that. I don't want to understand you. I'm just like me and leave me alone.
You know, I think, you know, Keith, the heart is the only thing that matters. What's in a person's heart is dictated by your actions, your behavior. Just like the Selma movie just came out, you know, going across the bridge. For a human being to kick a person's mother, a person's grandmother, and don't first think that this is a human being, this is somebody's mother, this is somebody's father. Just like, think about it for a moment. If I would never knock a person down the stairs.
But how do you undo that? Because I know you're aware and I'm aware that there are people brought up in a culture that the message is those kind of people are not human beings. And they're really taught that, and they believe that in their heart. I truly do. How do you get that person to transform, to see that that is a human being?
I think the first step is one-to-one dialogue. It's the first step. Transformation doesn't change, even differences. You know, if we don't have the capacity to sit and dialogue first. Wars exist today because people don't have the capacity to dialogue. It's like, no, I have my view, you have yours, we're not gonna even begin the discussion. Dialogue is the first one.
But how do you get them even to dialogue? Because I shared this story the other day. When I was in high school, I went to New Orleans, and we were a bunch of white kids, and they brought some Black Panthers in. And I sat across from this kid and held his hands, but I was willing to do that. And what I learned was, here was somebody who was a couple of years older than me who looked as scared of me as I was of him, which was a huge understanding for me. But I was willing to sit there, and so was he. How about all those people who just won't even sit down and have that discussion? I'm not going to talk to you.
You know, I do still think in that sense, you know, there's no easy fix, but it takes, you may think it's the longest route, but nonetheless it's a definite route. You know, Dr. Daisaku Ikeda, the Soka Gakkai International President, was able to have dialogue with Henry Kissinger and take Kissinger's message to Castro in a time when Japan was questioning, how dare you go speak to that human being? But because of the heart, they were able to begin efforts and causes to break down every barrier. And the world exists today because of causes that individual people have to have the capacity to start the journey of transformation. For example, there are many people, when I did diversity training, I was providing training for superintendents, and some of them were children of Klansmen. And
So
we
how did that
began
work
the
out for you?
dialogue. Excellent. We began the discussion afterwards.
But they had moved past that point probably with their education.
Yes,
Hopefully,
but at the same time,
but they still had it ingrained in them.
even when I provide training for educators, okay? These are educators who were raised a certain way by their grandmothers and grandfathers. It has to start with somewhere, the dialogue. And they ask me, what do I do when my parents don't want me to even have anything to do with African American people? You know? And I said, first of all, let me ask you, what are your thoughts about another human being? So I caused them to go inside, self-reflect. Self-reflection has to be a beginning process of anybody's human revolution.
It's still hard to erase those tapes in your head that you've heard your whole life, or
Yes.
as you were growing up, that really embedded. But you're saying to look deeper within yourself and try to transcend some of those thoughts.
Well, actually, practicing Buddhism has given me the opportunity to be able to transform the core of my destiny. Enlightenment and wisdom is critical for one's transformation. No matter what a person says to you, again, when I finish dialoguing with you, the only thing you may remember various key points, but you're going to remember how I made you feel. If I made you feel less than, or if I made you feel, wow, she was a kind person. You feel that, even without the intellectual conversation.
Well, you were interesting to listen to there. I'm going to remember a lot of this, so I can tell you that. I'm going to remember quite a bit of it. But you're right, it does make you feel good. I just really admire the work you're doing. So we're down to maybe about a minute here. So where are you headed with your what's the next thing you're going to be doing or trying to do here?
Well, I just came back from Vienna, Austria, and I was on a panel with Mahatma Gandhi's granddaughter and Mustafa, which is the grand leader for the Islamic faith, and a lot of different international religious leaders with 600 global leaders from all over the world. And I was there to address the issues of abolishing nuclear weapons. And that's an important thing for my heart and for my efforts for humanity. And I would like to continue to give my life to ensure that I'm able to contribute to humanity in a way to make a difference for young people and the world.
Well, I'm with you there, so I would like to do this also, so maybe we need to work on this together. So,
yes.
Well, thank you for being on the show and for sharing all these great stories, and particularly your heart of how you feel about things. And I'll be looking forward to it to see if I can get a copy of this book so I can read it.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you very much. It's been my honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have always enjoyed learning about history and culture. Today's show was about both. History can explain so much about where we are now, based on where we came from. History can show us when we made mistakes that we hopefully will not repeat. It can demonstrate what we have done right so we can celebrate and perhaps repeat those successes. Learning about cultures within our country and throughout the world can help us understand other peoples. It can increase our knowledge of how and why people living in those cultures behave, think, and believe the way they do. You may have noticed that my operative word in these previous statements was the word can. Can means that we are able to or have the ability to learn. We must make a conscious decision to engage in the act of learning about history or culture. It requires us to open a book, read an article, watch a video, or hear a speaker. Sometimes it simply takes the act of sitting with and listening to another person talk about their experiences, perceptions, and values. Sadly, many people choose to never engage in the act of learning about history or culture. Our world would be such a better place if more of us had greater understanding of each other. I know that I'm probably wasting my breath with this message to you. Why? Because if you're watching this show, you are the type who fully understands the importance of that, and I have just shared. So keep it up and demonstrate to others why you are so committed to this type of learning. Thanks for watching our show today. We would like to hear your thoughts and reactions to this program or my closing comments. Please email us today to focus@lakeshorepublicmedia.org or reach us through our website, which is listed on your screen. Remember, you can enjoy past Lakeshore Focus shows from our website. There is much to learn about history and culture on many of our episodes. Join us next week for another Lakeshore Focus. Until then, I'm Keith Kirkpatrick saying, make a positive difference in our world today.